All right. Well, are you guys ready? Should we dive into this?
Sounds good.
All
Let's
right.
do
Do
it.
it.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. So this is now episode number 32 of the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. So joining us today, we've got Nigel, we've got Ryan from DSX Motorsports, and we've got Jeanette from Red Queen Racing and from PPIR, and actually Dussex from PPIR as well. So today we wanted to talk about something that is something we've actually talked about kind of in the background or at events just amongst ourselves, but it kind of keeps coming back, and it's something that a lot of us have to deal with, and that is the stress of dealing with a track day or going to the track. And I think it's, going to the track or going to an event. I mean, on the surface of it, I mean, it's an exciting thing. I mean, this is something that we all like to do. We love to do it. We love to get out to the track and drive. But there's like this thing in the back of your mind that kind of sneaks in right as you're about to leave on a trip or you're about to go out to the track the day before, 2 days before, where all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what about this? Or are you ready? What could possibly happen? What could go wrong? And it's something that I think is totally normal. I think it hits pretty much anybody or could hit anybody. But for all of us, it's like some of us have found different ways to deal with it. And it's just such a thing that's come up enough that we figured, well, this would be a good topic to just kind of have a conversation about, because I'm sure that there's a lot of you listening that this is something that you deal with when you're going to an event as well. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. So I guess maybe like one of you guys, if you want to just kind of throw out like where has this come up in conversations or where has it come up for you guys so far?
So it's kind of funny. Me and Jeanette used to talk about, anticipation and being antsy, and when you got that big test and you're all nervous about it, and you kind of have a brain fart. I feel like racing cars is kind of like that. But I mean, for me personally, I've used that antsiness, that anxiety and stuff, and I've used racing cars as to spin it into a positive way. So now anytime I'm like anxious or I have anxiety or something, usually it's because something cool is about to happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, first and foremost, me trying to turn that negative stress into a positive thing has also helped other elements of my life where, like, instead of like, oh my God, I've got a test, now it's like, let's go jam this thing out. Let's take number one, and I mean, that's something I've been doing since I've been autocrossing for almost 2 decades now because I'm getting old. But I mean, just for
Experience.
starters. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So I actually do have a story that goes with what Ryan was just talking about, but I hope you don't mind me asking, Ryan, do you ever get nervous in a negative way? Like, do the nerves ever get to you?
I
Or
mean,
do you?
I don't think so. I think sometimes I have to like psych myself up. So like just for a really quick example, when I did SCCA time trials a couple of years ago, I spent like the whole weekend working on the car, and then eventually the car was running good. And the night before the last competition day, I was helping other people work on their cars because didn't have the stress, and you could see the stress on those dudes. But then I like drank way too much because people were handing me so many beers for helping them. I couldn't
Yeah.
tell if that was like a 12 mil socket or a half-inch drive, half-inch socket. I woke up the next day like, oh my God, it was the fourth day of driving. I was like, this is not for me. Why am I here? And then it was like slap, slap. It was like, all right, cool. Let's go make something happen. So it's even sometimes, I mean, I have to like wake myself up to make it work.
So
Hmm.
you did have that moment of like, I don't belong here. That did
Kind
exist
of,
for
yeah.
you. And the
Yeah.
Or
reason why I'm
just
asking Ryan, because Ryan has his exterior is so fun loving all the
mm,
time. It's
yeah,
Steve.
yeah. Well, and
But
I think too,
yeah,
like
go
a
ahead.
feeling of being overwhelmed. Like that's for me, that's what it is just there's this feeling of just like what I'm about to do is just there's just so much to it. I just don't know if I can do this. I just don't know if I can make all of this happen. So it's more of a feeling of overwhelmed rather than a fear of like just general stress. It's just being overwhelmed more.
There's a huge mix of emotions. Ryan's even made the joke. So my car number is 108, and the reason for that is that there's some Buddhist formula where you can experience like 108. Ryan's laughing already.
Yeah,
108 emotions and feelings and experiences.
yeah.
Like that's how the number. And Ryan's like, you can experience all 108 in like 30 seconds, and it's true when you go racing. For me,
Mm,
anyway, there's a huge mix of emotions. So The reason why Ryan and I have discussed this whole anticipation energy and then feeling it either become anxiety or feeling it become excitement is because when I first started autocrossing and Ryan introduced me, I was going through a phase in my life where there was personal trauma and I was having anxiety for the first time. I never experienced anxiety before that. And when we went to the autocross and it just like felt so intense, the build up to the getting to the start line. But then when you're racing through, and it was only like a 50-second course, my mind was like quiet for the first time in like a year and a half, because that could exist was the driving. And that's honestly what that's what clicked for me. That's why it's like, I'm never going to stop doing this again, because for someone who didn't grow up with anxiety and had no coping mechanisms for it, to have experienced it as an adult and then find something that cleared my mind, like find a solution to it, that was it for me. So
Sure.
The funny part of all of that is that I used racing as the coping mechanism for anxiety. And then you start going to time trial events where it is that overwhelming sensory overload of like, there's so much people, there's so much noise. There's like, what run group am I supposed to be in? Like I'm spending 20 minutes, there's cars all around me. So it's almost in a weird way invited more anxiety into my life and chaos. But it's still it's controlled chaos in a lot of ways, and it is every event's different for me. The last event at Pueblo, I didn't feel stressed at all. I did have a little bit of rage at one point because I got competitive.
Okay.
And then but other times I get really nervous and I start freaking out. I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Feeling of I don't belong here is like the biggest thing for me leading up to and like even in my first session every weekend. Like by lap 2 on track, I'm usually fine. And then I have that whole like, oh right, this is great. I love this. This is why I'm here. Yeah. But every like I'd say a week before the event, I'd go through like this roller coaster of like, I'm so pumped, I'm so hyped, I can't believe I'm getting to go to the track again. It's so exciting, to like, oh my God, everything is going to be horrible and I'm not going to be prepared and I'm going to get there and stuff's going to go wrong. And then I'm like, no, I'm prepared. This is going to be great. It's going to be an amazing time. And then I get there and I'm like, oh God, why did I do this? Why am I choosing to do this with my life? And then I get out there and like lap 1, I'm like trying to find my bearings and like, you know, if you go out and you're in the middle of a run group for your first session, you know, you're worrying about where the other cars are. And like, I care way too much about like stuff that doesn't exist or doesn't matter when I'm in that first lap for just, I can't shut my brain off that quickly. And then as soon as I start my first hot lap, it's just, then it goes quiet, like you said. And it's just like, oh, right, this is it.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I think there's a real similarity between stress and excitement. It's almost like, and kind of like to your first point, Ryan, like the feeling, it's really, really close and it's hard to tell, like, am I stressed or am I excited? And so I can totally see, Ryan, like, because of that similarity, if you can kind of take it from a feeling of overall stress and kind of merge it or move it over to just excitement, I mean, that would certainly be one way to deal with it. But it's just, it's one of those things too, where like, if you have stress in just a normal day-to-day situation, you can kind of feel that sense of excitement come up, but it's like, wait a minute, am I just feeling more stress for what I'm about to do? Or is this actually a good thing? You know, it's hard to kind of like get yourself mentally set in the right way. But like, to your point, you know, having an approach to deal with that is, I mean, there's a value in that in driving, there's a value in that in competing, but there's a real value in that in just day-to-day life. So there's a real motivation to try and kind of work on that or develop techniques to kind of sort that out.
And I think that oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
I was just going to say, I think racing does teach you that, because you do have, and it's a little bit of this roller coaster of you have this angst, and then you pull up to that starting line, and then the excitement settles in, and then you're driving, and you do learn to turn anticipation into excitement, not anxiety. And I've experienced that. I remember before I started working at PPIR, I went to a job interview at where Ryan and I worked before, the corporate office in Texas. And I was so stressed out the entire time until we landed. And then all of a sudden I was so excited. And I was just so happy throughout the entire interview process. And it was like my body at that point got trained. It was like muscle memory of like, oh, you're stressed out, be happy. This is a good thing. It's like a weird addictive, like self-destructive thing now. It's like, oh, we're stressed out, we're happy.
That's a tough line to walk, that's for sure. Yeah. One of the best things I've heard about just like trying to kind of consciously form stress into something positive is kind of like what you said, Ryan, is to think of it as like, don't think of it as stress or anything negative. Just think of it as, I have this extra energy and I'm going to be able to use that extra energy for this task, you know? So when you feel that stress, just think of it as in terms of the energy that it brings to you, and that you can actually use that energy to whatever you're trying to get done.
Yeah. And I mean, not trying to be a life coach by any means, but sometimes I think we stress out in the moment about stuff that can't be changed anymore. Or, I mean, think about taking a test. I mean, you've only studied as much as you can up to that point. Once you get in that environment, I mean, if you continue to worry about, oh my God, I didn't study enough, you're not going to perform as well as if you were like, all right, fuck it, let's just do it. And racing cars is kind of like that. And I witnessed it last weekend with my buddy Robbie Jackson, who unfortunately ended up blowing his motor. So somewhat rightfully so. But he was so stressed out in his first couple of sessions driving the car about what it was doing. And did that make a noise? And oh my God, or what about this? Or what about that? That like, you can't change it. Like up to that point, you can only, there's nothing else you can do about it. And so thinking about all those things really takes away from what you're trying to actively do, whether it's taking a test or driving a car. Yep. And he couldn't change anything that had happened. He worried about it in the moment and didn't get to drive the car until like really the day that it actually broke, which kind of sucks. But at least up into that moment, he said, fuck it, the check engine light's on. I'm just going to go out and drive. He did go his fastest run. That session, it did break, but he spent so much of time thinking about, because nothing he was doing, you know, there wasn't anything like he would pull over on the side of the track to make an adjustment and then go back out there. Anything like you're literally up to that point. I mean, that's all you can do. I definitely take that with me a lot when I drive too. You can't think like on track. You can notice stuff like, oh my God, that's a weird vibration. I'm going to come in. But you can't think, oh my God, is there going to be a vibration that starts, you know?
Yep.
Do you think that comes with like self-confidence? And do you think that self-confidence can be gained through experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there has to be a point just with everything in life. I mean, and self-confidence is one of those things. And I think driving in a competitive environment with results, like measurable results, are one of those things that can help build self-confidence. Like even if you're dead last place, you can see, shit, I improved 5 seconds, like just from one session to the next. Like that's a measurable result, and that builds a little bit. And then eventually you can tick up to like, oh my God, I'm the 3rd fastest car of the weekend, you know, and then you're like, okay, that's sick, and helps self-confidence. But it also like you're saying, that experience lends to that, you know, especially in a competitive environment where you have you're actually being measured, which some people don't like being in the spotlight, you know, but you are being measured, and you make these goals, or you have these achievements, and it helps, I think, quiet the mind down. Because like I know when I drive the best when I'm not even thinking about what's going on, like literally just driving off my fingertips. That didn't happen overnight. I mean, that's just like 10 years, you know, to get to that point. And some people like Jeanette, I think, get there a lot faster, but every now and then we have to remind ourselves to just like, you know, calm your chi, or, you know, hit your chi, or what is it, Jeanette? You know, where you basically just quiet your mind and you just go out and do like what you've been preparing to do that whole time.
I would say, I would call it being in the moment.
Yeah,
Whatever you're doing, especially when you're in the car, you need to focus on being in that moment and driving the car. Because it's like if you're pulling your car on track, you could be worried about every noise that you hear, every piece of input or vibration or whatever that you're feeling, but any amount of that worry is not going to do any good in that scenario. It's almost like you have to have like a go no go. Like if you're pulling onto track and there's something that like is causing your concern to really trip, like, hey, there's smoke coming out of the engine. You should, the only thing you can do, like worrying about the smoke, that's not going to do anything. You've got to pull over and deal with that issue. But if you don't have any concern that's enough to the point where you would actually pull the car off track or pull back into the pits, you kind of have to then put yourself in the mode of being in the moment of driving and just focus on driving. And kind of like what you said, Jeanette, I mean, some of the enjoyment of the kind of event or doing something like driving is that you can just put 100% of your focus into what you're doing. And it can be a fun feeling. And then it's just something where once you really put all of your focus on what you're doing, that's when driving is the most fun, or a lot of other events like skiing or downhill bike racing or something like that. Those have that similar feeling of just it takes 100% of your focus to really do this at your best.
And it takes time, honestly. It takes it takes endurance to teach yourself, because in autocross, when I first did it, it's only a 50-second run. And then your mind just goes blank. But when you're doing a session for time trials, you're out there for 20 minutes. And if you're not out there, like I've gone out on sessions and I'm thinking about other things while I go out and I drive terribly. Or the last open lapping day I did at Pueblo, they had like 50-minute sessions. And the car could keep going longer than I could, just because after about 20 minutes, I noticed that my focus would start to stray. I would start thinking about other things. I was like, okay, it's time to go in because you're no longer focusing. So I wanted to mention that just in case if anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh, I can go drive and my mind will be clear. And it's like, no, it might take time to build up that endurance for it. And that's okay. You just have to be aware, like once the minute that your mind starts to wander, make sure that you're being safe. Check in with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and there's a difference where like you're just allowing everything else to kind of fall away and having your focus be just driving. But then when you get to a high level of driving, it kind of goes the other direction where all of a sudden it takes such a level of concentration to try and really be pitched, inch perfect on every piece of input that you're giving the car and to hit your marks and do what you want to do, that all of a sudden it can become actually like mentally fatiguing to really like be in that mode for long periods of time.
True.
Yeah.
I think people ask me like what my driving is or what line did you drive in. I think I go into like this hyper unfocused focus, if that makes sense, where I basically am just like kind of looking. It's not even like that. It's like my brain isn't recording anything unless like one of those little things are happening, where like, oh my God, there's smoke or whatever, my wheel's about to fall off. But I almost go into like this blank mode where I'm just out there just literally feeling it. And I get back in the pit and then just everything will rush back together. Like at Washington, it was like that. I went out that second day for that one session to beat Adam Harding. And I just went out there and it just cleared my mind just went blank. I went and drove, came back in, and I was literally like bawling in the paddock because like you kind of I was like recollecting things. And then I like saw the time that I ran and like I could have went faster, but oh my God, it was so awesome. And just like, the whole time I'm driving, I'm not getting caught up in any of that stuff. I'm not like thinking about anything. It's not emotional. It's not anything. I'm not pushing sometimes I'm pushing myself, but like, I kind of like step back into this weird, like blank phase and I just go out there and it just happens. I mean, that's something that like Nigel is kind of saying, I think you have like the focus, you get more focus, and all of a sudden you just take this weird mental step back and then shit just happens.
Yeah.
And then it all comes rushing back together. I couldn't do that for 2 hours. I can do that for 6 minutes, as far as I know. But it's hard to just. I think that's like that weird phase.
Yeah.
It just takes time to get to.
Is that something that you've experienced more recently, like after 2 years of racing hardcore? They didn't connect like that right away.
No, I feel like that's something that's been happening more this year than anything. And we've driven a ton of stuff. And like when I do endurance racing, like the last endurance race I did was in Josh Fitzpatrick's car. I kind of went in that first, 10, 15 minutes of driving, like really super focused and super rigid. Oh my God, the car's squirrely. And I don't like this. And oh my God, that. And then I just kind of like relaxed and then had like a huge chunk of time where I was kind of driving at like that focus, but I never got to where I just like stepped back and just let it happen, And I feel like this year I've been able to, like, you get that focus level up and then I just step back and then it just happens. Does that make sense?
It does.
But I mean, it's weird.
It's like it's like letting, trusting your instincts and trusting your reflexes to, have a lot more control over the inputs and the driving that you're doing versus trying to be like in total control in real time of everything that you're doing. The example that comes to mind is hitting a fastball. So I was reading something, and forgive me if I'm off on this slightly, but it's something to the effect that, there's you can time somebody's reflexes and like how quickly, like, you see a light or you see the ball leave the pitcher's hand, and how quickly you can consciously react to an event. And like a major league fastball gets to the catcher's mitt before, like, faster than you should be able to consciously react. So like when you're standing up there and trying to hit a fastball, it's actually your subconscious that is hitting that fastball versus you trying to be able to be tight grips and control of everything that you're doing at that moment to hit the fastball, because you can't react fast enough. And it's like you're just kind of letting your subconscious do more of the driving than trying to be like really controlling at that point.
It reminds me. Oh, go ahead, Nigel.
Okay. Something that I've always wanted to like ask other drivers is, in those moments, do you talk to yourself in your helmet, or are you like quiet?
It depends. I mean, I look at some of my video and I'll notice like where you kind of have like a conscious reflection all of a sudden, and then you start driving, where I can see. I always run a lap timer where I can see it, and I do it for a couple reasons. But the biggest one is like when I see that I'm really hitting my marks, then I kind of jump forward a little bit, and then I'm like actually doing it. And then those moments, that's when you know when that's happening, because you'll hear it in my thing like, let's go, let's go, let's go. I won't even know that's happening until like that pops up in my head. Like a good example is like when I was driving my Civic at High Plains at that SCCA time trials, and I was on pace for like a 107 or 108. And I had no idea that was happening. I was just driving, hitting my marks, and just kind of like by the fingertips. And I'm coming around 8, and I see a Corvette kind of driving down into 10, and it pops. I see it in my mind, and I literally like right there. And then I drove with, all my tactile functions right first and foremost. And then I still ran that time. I don't know if I'd have been faster or slower, but that was one of those moments where when I'm talking to myself in my video, I know that's what's happening. I'm coming like from the reflexes to like, this is what's happening right in front of me. And I know that's what's happening because I couldn't tell you what I was doing leading up to turn 8. Like, did I hit my marks out of 5? Did I do this? Did I keep it in? Just the stuff I was already working on. But from 8 all the way to the finish, I can tell you exactly where I put the car because that was like, I woke up almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I'm talking to myself, but actually when there's when there are GoPros in the car, you don't hear me at all. So I'm like thinking really loudly to myself. So I think I'm talking out loud, but it's and for me it's just like if there's a certain corner I know I need a late break, I can break even later, and I just need to be braver. I'm yelling at myself like brake late, don't do it. Oh, you fucking don't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the extent of my talking to myself, or the occasional F-bomb. But
the verbal motivator, yeah.
The rage is more vocal.
Yeah. Well, and let's kind of take it back one step in which is, it sounds like, I mean, we've all found some way to get to this point where we can let everything else drop away. But I mean, do you recall a time where it was really hard to get to that point? Well, and it sounds like we've all had that path where we've had to find a way to get to that point where we can just let everything drop away and focus on the task at hand, which is driving. But it's like, maybe let's talk about some more techniques about that, in addition to just kind of a mindset for driving. Because I think that's one of the bigger barriers that a lot of people can get into, is just like, it's even like, for me, it's the day before. It's like trying to get ready to leave the next morning to go to the track. It's like falling asleep that night, or being to the point where I'm like, everything that I can do today is now done. I've got to just go to bed and get up in the morning and then do what I've got to do. That's sometimes for me is one of the trickiest parts to get through, to just get on with the next day at hand.
So for
I think-
me, I'll,
No,
I'll
go ahead,
go,
Nigel.
I'll relate this back to the scope creep conversation we had,
Sure.
where like there has to be an ending point or an ending goal, and that time has to come before you're ready to go to the track. So like the way that I handle it is if my car's not ready the day before an event, I'm not going to go to that event because I'm never going to be in a place where I'm prepared enough, like Ryan is, where he can go to an event, work on his car at the event, and get out on the final day or something. I know that that's not a possibility for me, so I have to make sure much earlier in advance. And I found that out through experience. That wasn't like just something I knew. My first time I went to Ohio, I had to do all kinds of work on the car at the track, and I hated it. And that made the entire weekend just like the epitome of an anxiety stress response weekend. It was horrible. And that, yeah, but that taught me that having a goal, setting it early, and giving yourself a buffer. So you're like, okay, the week before the car needs to go to this event, it's going to be ready and prepped and done. And I'm not working on it anymore. And then going through your checklists of stuff. So I've created checklists for things like going over all my equipment. Do I need to replace anything like my driver gear? I got holes in my gloves, so I have to replace those or something, or whatever, like making sure that's all done like well in advance. So the night before you're just reviewing everything and you're just like, okay, cool. Check. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I picked up the trailer yesterday. Everything was in good shape on the trailer. Car's all loaded up, ready to go. First thing in the morning, we're going to do this. We're going to get breakfast and we're on the road. Like having that like schedule so set so early is one of the things that for me takes away a huge amount of the stress.
You're a planner.
Yeah.
I'm not. I hate it.
No.
But I try to be just for this.
But that's a huge thing to discover, that technique really helps reduce your stress level. And so like having a list, having a schedule, that's something like once you find that, then that's really helpful to know for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Jeanette can attest to this. I have like ways I like to do things, but I don't have a priority on doing anything. So like, for example, when I travel, I like to get on the road the night before, and even if it's like an hour, and just drive like whatever direction I'm trying to get to, an hour or two or 100 miles away from home. And like it does, for me, it does two things. One, when I wake up in the morning, you're already on the road and you just go. And two, and this helps with the RV, of course. And two, it kind of like creates like a hard, that's it. You know,
Yep.
I mean, everything up to this point is done. Everything that you forgot is behind you. I mean, I've been driving down the road 15 minutes, like, oh shit, and turn around and got stuff, you know, which is kind of nice because that always happens.
Yeah.
But
or an
having
hour
like
and a half. We've turned around an hour and a half before. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, but
4
I mean,
hours for me is my longest.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
but I mean, starting like if normally I would leave, if normally people would leave in the morning to leave to an event, I like to try and leave the night before, even if it's like 9 o'clock at night, because it gives me a little bit of flexibility. It puts me in that road mindset already, where I'm like literally like, all right, we're driving, and when I wake up in the morning, walk the dogs, grab a burrito, and then hit the road. Whereas it seems like every time I'm trying to go somewhere or do something, and I'm leaving from like the morning of, there's always these delays. Like there's always these things. There's always that thing in my mind, and there's always something. And you get out, and it's like 11 o'clock in the afternoon, and not only am I like 100 miles behind where I would have been, but I'm also like 5 hours behind driving.
Right.
So
it's that difference between getting ready to leave and actually leaving and going on the road.
Yeah.
Like it's funny, like with my kids, whenever we're going anywhere, like even like 15 minutes down the road, it's like to get them out the door is a challenge because it's like, oh, well, I need this to get them close to the door. Wait, I forgot this. But then there's that transition of like once you're out the door, once you're in the car and you pull out of the driveway, it's like your mindset shifts at that point. Yeah.
I mean, that's just like one of the, I'm not quite the planner like Nigel is, and I have definitely worked on that car literally up to minutes before loading it on a trailer. But I have, and I kind of have a little bit of an advantage, like Nigel was saying, where I can I'm confident that I know I can keep going and, you know, and fix that or finish that or do this or do that. But but yeah, I mean, I don't have like a set plan. I just know that like I feel good when I leave this and I feel behind when I leave then, you know, and that's the only thing I try and do. And I think for people like Jeanette's traveled with me quite a bit, which has been pretty nice. But for people who aren't used to traveling with me and do their own thing, it's probably like Ryan Sotak wanted to go with me to nationals. Like, I'm going to leave Tuesday night and not Wednesday morning. He's like, really? I'm like, I just like, it's in my brain. Like, that's the thing I like to do, you know? And I think finding that process like Nigel has or Nigel does, I think really helps too. Even if it's something is not concrete, as like, I'm just going to do this instead, you know?
Yep.
Because there's a lot of midnight prep, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you got to do.
Well, for me, the thing that where I get overwhelmed is thinking about all the possible outcomes or all the things, like trying to think of every possible issue or error or failure that I might run into and trying to account for it. And that's where, like, as I keep trying to think of other possible outcomes or possible things to consider, that's where it just like everything just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I've tried to kind of remind myself of is that you cannot plan for every possible outcome. It's just not possible. And so as I start to feel myself spiraling out of control there, what I try and remind myself is this is kind of like what you've said, Ryan, is I can't plan for every possible outcome, but I can know that I have a skill set and experience that I can rely on so that whatever does come up, I have a lot of tools that I can bring to whatever that situation is. And so it's kind of shifting for me. It helps me shift from feeling overwhelmed and stressed to kind of transitioning into coming from a place of confidence, where like I've done X, Y, and Z. I've got all the tool. I've got every tool that I own. Whatever happens, you know, I've got everything that I can throw at it right now, and I'll probably be able to figure something out. And that's once I can make that transition, then that's usually where I can feel the stress level goes down and just kind of like, okay, now let's just take the next thing that comes up.
I'm so different from you guys. the getting ready and going. So mind you, if there's anything happening to my car, I'm a wreck. I'm crying. But when the car is put together and it's getting into the trailer, that's not the stressful part for me at all. It's always at the track. It's before that first session. It's even in the middle of the day. That's where it's overwhelming and stressful. And then you asked earlier if we could think of a specific time, and there have been times, and Ryan probably thought I was a psycho, where in between run sessions, I don't meditate, but I feel like that's something I would benefit from in life. And I felt like I kind of had to, like, I laid on the ground because I was like so stressed out and so freaked out. This is when we were first doing open lapping. I think it was before our first grid life. And it was at High Plains Raceway, and I laid on the ground and I had my eyes closed and I just listened to everything that was happening to me. Like I had to like do the best that I could to clear my mind. And I was just listening to the noise of the cars. I was listening to the crunching of people walking by. And I think Ryan he just ignored me. He just thought I was crazy. But like it was that center in myself and calming down before getting in the car and going. So the packing part doesn't stress me out too much. And that's probably because I'm naive. I don't know what can go wrong. So nothing's gonna go wrong. But before I go on the session for the driving, that's where my freakouts happen.
So I should say, to clarify, the organization and trying to get stuff done like a week in advance is to try and relieve that level of anxiety, because I get that at the track. So Jeanette and I have talked about this before, where like we get to the track and we have that like super high stress level. I still get that, but the only way that I can like manage that is if all this other stuff is taken care of, that I can try and like, I know I'm going to worry about whether or not the trailer is ready to go for a week before I have to go. I know I'm going to worry about whether or not my car is ready to go for a week before I have to go there. I know I'm going to worry about a million things. And then once I'm at the track, all those worries then switch to, is my car going to break? Am I like, and the whole like belonging there thing. Am I doing anything right? You know, am I in the right grid place? Am I joining the grid at the right time? that was such a huge stress for me at my first event, was like being in the right place at the right time. Like, am I supposed to be in this line? Am I in the right place in line? And like, nobody's telling me I'm doing it wrong, but does that mean they're just not telling me that? Or like,
they don't actually know themselves. That's the secret to a lot of these events. No one knows anything.
Right,
especially at Grid Life.
Sure. But going to your first event and not knowing any of that, having zero experience, I was just like, okay, they did a first call to grid. I have to go and sit in line for 20 minutes and sit in my car and not move and not do anything. So then it's also like time felt like it moves different throughout the weekend. The beginning of the weekend, when you're like first settling in and you're first like finding out where you're going to be gridded, or you're doing like a qualifying session or whatever, that time feels really constrained. Like 20 minutes feels like 5
hours.
I only have, well, the other way around, where like I only have 5 minutes to prepare my car for this. I have to I got to go put my suit on and put my helmet on and get ready. I have no time. And then you're through your session and it was super quick, and you're like, okay, I got to get ready for my next session already. And it just goes by super fast because you're so busy, or for me, I'm so busy stressing about every single part of it. And then by the end of the weekend, I've found the flow. I understand how things work. Like, your first time going to a new track, I don't know where the what do they call it? The second grid.
Yeah.
So not the hot pit lane,
false grid.
The false grid.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is. I'm trying to find somebody who I don't know to follow and hope that they're going to the false grid so that I go to the right place and I see my number somewhere. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. And then by the end of the weekend, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I can help you out because you missed 3 sessions and this is your first session. Just follow me.
You know, it's so funny because I've become comfortable being the stupid girl of like, I don't know where I'm going. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm totally okay with that. I'm okay being lost. Until I started working at PPIR and people who I don't even know recognize me a little bit. And like, it happened at NCM where I was in grid or in the false grid. And somebody was like, just checking. I was like, how's things going? Yeah, they're good. You ready? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And they walked away, and then they came back like, you work for PPIR, don't you? And there's something about that creates this level of like, oh, I should know what I'm doing, so I can't look stupid. So that's where the feelings for me not belonging started to kick in. But you just got to have some humor with it. I think it's okay to look a little stupid as long as you're not being that idiot who's unsafe or driving all over the track with oil dumping everywhere or whatever. But as long as, I think you just have to find the humor in it. Like, oh, I fucked up.
Well, and I think, I think I probably do this, and Jeanette, maybe this is what you're alluding to, is like, you feel like you cannot make a wrong step. Like, if you're not perfect and doing everything that you need to do, being where you need to be at every right moment, that somebody's going to get mad at you, or they're going to kick you out or whatever. And the reality is, just like you said, like, most of the time there's a lot of people that don't really have a sense of what has to happen, and they're just kind of like in the vicinity, and they're like, yeah, it's all going to work out. And I think that just a lot of people, like, some of us really obsess about all those details, and some people are just like, I know that I'm supposed to get on the track. I'm going to go by the track entrance, and it'll work itself out. And I really have a tough time going, it'll work itself out with pretty much anything in life. But I think that there's some points where it just, like, to let go and just like, I don't have to be perfect. I just get enough of the details to get like in the area that I need to be in, and it'll all just kind of fall into place.
And it does kind of go both ways. Sorry, I'm just going to say this real quick.
Yeah.
Because the more disorganized that the organization is, the more clustered that they are, the less security that the drivers will feel. Yeah. And I've seen that at different places and multiple times. But the more organized that they are, it's easier to manage. But at the same time, sometimes they're a little bit too strict about the way that things are supposed to run. So if you do make a mistake, no one's laughing about it with you. They're all like, come on. So it goes both ways, where like if the organization's a little bit more chill and they're a little bit more relaxed, then everybody has less guidance. But if they're a little bit more strict about it, then you feel like there's less room for error. there's less forgiveness on it. And I've experienced it both ways. Because yeah, go ahead.
Or so I was saying, I'm reminded of Jenson Button when he won the Monaco Grand Prix. It's Formula One, so like super strict, follow every rule. It's in Monaco. I've been there. They're super strict as like a principality. You have to follow every rule when you're there. He parks his car after the race. He didn't know that you were supposed to park it at the start finish line when you won the race. He parked it in the pit lane and had to jog all the way out the pit lane, around and back up to the start finish line to go get the trophy. And it's like, that's exactly where like nobody cared. Nobody was bothered by it. Like this is like the top level of motorsport, super strict people. And like, okay, dude, come on. Like that's an easy mistake to make, but like act like you've been there before, I guess. And there's so many different like ways to take that. But I feel like it's one of those, like, if you can see that happen in Formula One and everybody was like, yeah, it's cool. Everybody makes a mistake, no big deal. If you can try to channel that, that's kind of how, in my experience, everything's been for the events that I've been to.
Most of the time, that's it. I mean, I can't. I mean, I haven't done as many events as you guys have, but I can't think of any circumstance where somebody was like not where they needed to be exactly at the moment that they needed to be, and then got kicked out for the whole rest of an event. It's like you might miss a track session, but there's just not that high of stakes.
I've even missed a session. Like I got gridded in, I don't know, like group B or something for grid life. And I couldn't make it out in time for that session. I was working on the car and I went over and talked to him like, hey, I missed my session. Can I run with group C? I was the last car gridded in B anyway. And they're like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Just go out and run in C, find a spot. Oh, okay, cool. It's that easy to just like miss your spot or like be in the wrong place or like, hey, I didn't make it out in time. Can I run with the next group? And usually they're like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. Like as long as you're not like doing it for an unsafe reason or like doing something dangerous or dumb, I guess.
Yeah. It's something where
we always talk about that idea, you fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's this quote I heard in a song the other day, and I can't remember the exact quote, and I was actually trying to look it up, so that's why I was being that guy. But basically, it's talking like we don't know how like the galactic is of the galaxy. We don't know, why this thing is this way or why this thing is that way. But whether we know the answers to all those things is going to happen no matter what. Just like you breathe without knowing or thinking about breathing. Kind of like the more you do this, you show up to an event and you just do it, and you don't have to know all the specifics of how it all works to do it. You just do what you can, and it just becomes eventually, like breathing or just like the galaxy exists. You don't have to know all the specifics to it. You just do it, and that's all it takes sometimes. Just going.
And I feel like that the frequency of going to events, just like Ryan's saying, it really does help because so last year I was having a season of listening to the car too much. Like there was something wrong with the car. I understand the car. I wasn't driving. And I feel like I lost a lot of driving ability, or I lost a lot of confidence in my driving ability. So when Ryan and I went to the Ridge, which was our first event this year, I was kind of a wreck, like in my head. Like my mental game was totally off. And then driving the car reminded me why I was doing it. And then at NCM, I was building more and more confidence, but I wasn't willing to push Ryan's car because there's high risk at that track. And all my anxiety and my lack of confidence fell off because all I wanted to do was push a car hard. So then by the time I went to Pueblo in my car, like there was no anxiety. I was just so excited to be like, yeah, I'm going to just push it. I'm going to brake late. Like I'm going to just huck this car in the corners. So the building up of the event really, really does help.
Sure. It's the experience to kind of figure out mentally what you need to prepare, and mentally like building up the mental skills. Like how can I go to an event and really get myself in the mindset that I need to be in to have fun, but also to be fast, go, do what I need to do.
So something else that you guys mentioned, like, okay, so Jeanette and Ryan travel a lot together. What's your support system look like at the track? Is it just you guys? Do you guys try to like, do you talk to a lot of the other drivers and stuff when you're at an event, or like how does your support system look when you're there to handle that stress?
I can take that one if you want, Ryan, or do you want to go
Yeah,
first?
I definitely think you should.
So Ryan and I are complete opposites at the track as far as social. Ryan is out in the paddocks. He's talking to everybody. He's very social, and I'm very like I'm not meditating, but I'm just like you don't exist. I'm focused. Like go away. So we're total opposites when it comes to that. But we've developed a really good system because every event that we've been to this year, we've driven the same car. So we've developed a really good system of whoever the driver is of that day or of that session, the other person's the pit crew. So we both know how to do all the same things, and we know where the tire pressures are, the communication's all there. We all know the expectations. We're helping each other, even in his car, buckle, because his car is a beast to get in, buckle in and everything, and turning on cameras, all of that. And then if Ryan is instructing, which he did a couple of times, or running TT at Pueblo, I do more of the pit work. But if it's an open lapping day, which we've done a couple of times and there's no competition, he basically does all the pit work. So we've totally have developed just whatever the other person is doing, we adapt the needs to that person. And then he goes off and socializes and bees Ryan, and then I go and hide away from people. That's basically our track weekend.
Yeah.
So would you say that having a person there like with you that close and that tight for a whole weekend like helps relieve that stress?
For me, it does, especially because Ryan is so mechanically inclined. So I love it when he co-drives with me, especially in the BRZ, because if something goes wrong with the BRZ, he's going to get it fixed, and so he can get it drive it again. So like it's that insurance for me of like, if it breaks down, it's okay. Ryan's going to fix it, and it's not doing me a huge favor. Like, so I don't feel like I'm in debt to him because he's driving it too. So I'll keep letting Ryan drive my car just to keep it running.
Well, and to your point, Nigel, I think I was trying to mentally check, and I don't think I've ever gone to the track by myself. And I think if I would ever go to the track just completely solo, like not know anybody else, I would be an absolute just stress case. But like for me, like having anybody else there, it deflects, it keeps me out of my own head. Just enough, like so, like, hey, where's Nigel? Where's Ryan? Or like check in with somebody, or like to know that hey, something happened. I don't know what just happened, and I have somebody that I can talk to try and figure it out. Even just having one person that I know I can reach out to is a massive help.
What's your experience, Ryan?
I think that's part of my socialness too. I mean, we went to the first Grid Life, for example, and we really didn't know anybody. We had Frank there with us and stuff, and it definitely put me out. But I think it was when I broke my transmission, like on the first day. But I think it was really one of those experiences where I'm already a social person, and I start connecting those dots and start bringing it together. Like even this company is one of my good buddies that I met on the other part of the country, and I think that's kind of. I like doing the social thing, and I always kind of bring in that network kind of around me because we're a fun-loving dude and having a good time and stuff like that. But like Jeanette taking the question earlier in this moment was fun because when we got back from Pueblo, Jeanette texted me, was like, hey, I really like being at these events with you, even in my own car, because it's fun to just drive the car and sit and pout if I'm not going as fast as I want to, or find out ways to go faster, or beat you, which she beat me on Saturday. But I like it. I like when helping her on the paddock day or on the open lapping day, I didn't want to drive. I wanted to drive, but I didn't want to drive at the same time. I like kind of being like, do this, do that. I'm torquing the wheels down, get out of my way. I'm putting the fuel in. Like you just think about driving. I enjoy doing that without having the pressure that like the paid guys do. Cause I look at like some of these dudes on these paid teams with these guys are like throwing their helmets, cussing, like reckless in the paddock, like even at a NASA event. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself like, man, and those poor guys got to work on this dude's car and figure out what's wrong with it. And that's how he's behaving. Whereas me and Jeanette kind of have more of like, hey, fix this, or can you help me with that? Or I'm already on it. I think it's like definitely a more symbiotic relationship as far as at the track goes. And it's fun. Like I like tinkering but I'm glad I'm not swapping transmissions, you know? So I like kind of tinkering, and I like taking care of stuff. I like getting everything set up, and, you know, where just like you get in the car, you put on your belts and your suit and everything, and you just go. And when I get back, I'm taking care. I do enjoy it, but I there's also the end goal of like, I'm excited to drive the car this weekend too. I don't think I could ever just like transport a car, work for an unhinged person, and then deal with that like stress, because I'd be like, you know what, fuck you, you're slow. But it's kind of fun to be like with Jeanette, or even co-driving with anybody, like co-driving with Nick, or co-driving, you know, other people's cars and stuff, to just be on a team. You know, I definitely think that helps. And we've talked about it, me and Scotty's not here right now, but we've talked about it before. I know Jeanette and I have talked about it before. I mean, there's an advantage if you're new to an event, bringing somebody on with you who has experience, because they do know where everybody's supposed to be. They do know where the false grid is. They do know how just the general like environment is. Like going to grid life now is like, it's almost funny in the comparison. Like, do you know where you're at? I was like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Like, why are you that stressed? Like, how could you know that like running with grid life, or running with Global Time Attack, or NASA, or SCCA, or whatever, like you kind of got a feel of it. And bringing somebody with you to do that event, and you've never been there before, I think definitely helps out a ton.
And you know, the community really, really steps up, because I've been to events without Ryan, and I've been to events with other drivers co-driving my car, and I've been to events by myself. And I've been to events by myself before the supercharger. So it was back when the car was very predictable. So, and every single time, so like even our first grid life, I remember I was panicked trying to figure out, where am I supposed to go? Like, how does this work? Like, how do I even know when I go up? And I went up to the tower thinking that it was like an information area, and I ran into another driver who just totally just answered all my questions, and he was totally chill about it and super excited for me, and kind of gave me his confidence a little bit just in his own excitement. And then I've been to other events where people loan tools, and I have also, I mean, poor Ryan, I've been to events without him, and I'm calling him like, hey, what do I do? This happened. And so the community really does step up, but it is a little bit more unpredictable of like that, if there is going to be someone there who you can rely on if you need them.
I don't think I've ever been to an event where there was more than maybe just one or two drivers or crews that were standoffish. Almost everybody, like if you just start walking around the panic, like, man, I can't remember. I think it was when Victor came to High Plains, and he had this, one of his rear subframe bushings just like completely fell out of his car. And so I'm walking around to everybody that's there. Hey, do you happen to have a giant washer that we could use to try and hold this thing together? And everybody's like, sorry, man, I don't. But most people were like, let me look through my toolbox. Like, no, I don't have anything. And we ended up finding something that worked. But it's like, yeah, I think for generally speaking, in driving and motorsports, you can actually put a lot of faith in the people that are out there, because there really is a community feeling out there. There really are. There's going to be somebody or a number of people that are more than happy to just help out. I should start telling myself that a lot more as I'm going to these events. That in and of itself would be helpful. Just kind of, hey, you know what? There's people there. I can talk to people there that can help me out.
It's true.
I do like being in the position I am locally, like in Colorado with like NASA, and because NASA has always been kind of like the more pointy edge of strictness and stuff, where I could say like, yeah, go ahead and run in TTB, or yeah, let me know what you need, or hey, are you having a good time? And feel like there's just not enough of that. And then Colorado SCCAs with their time type program is kind of like more disorganized, where like you don't know where you're supposed to be, but it is super chill at the same time. Where I'm trying to keep it chill, but trying to hone in some of that organization, so people like know where they're supposed to be, and confident that they're going where they want to be, and confident that they're gonna have a good time, and all that other stuff. And I like being in that kind of that position ish or whatever, where I'm helping people have a good time, but also bring some organization and answer those questions before they're even like thought of. Hey, this is where grid is. This is where you come offline. This is where you do that. Or I think that helps a lot, because there's just not enough of that, you know? A lot of organizers are just organizers. A lot of drivers are just drivers. And like Jeanette's in a unique position where she's actually like works for a company that it's advantageous that she has experience with both. And I've learned a lot from her experience too, and from my own experience as a driver to try and do those same things and kind of help answer those questions like guys like Nigel would have, or like anybody would have, or put people into contact with people, or I don't know. I think it's something that we're trying to do, but I mean, it's something that I'm actively trying to do because of the experiences that we're all talking about here.
Well, that's the one question I wanted to ask Ryan and Jeanette is because now you've been on literally completely both sides of it. You've been a driver and you've attended events just as drivers and whatnot, but now you've completely put on events, like 100%, like you've run the organization of the event as well. And we've done track days in the past, and I've organized them a little bit, but like has organizing an event changed your perspective on being a driver at your event? And I mean, it sounds like, Ryan, from what you're saying, it absolutely has, but I just wondered maybe if that has changed anything for you.
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. Like I was just saying, I mean, I feel like I know I've been doing the time trials thing from like a short enough of time that I can remember, like my first event, 3 or 4 years ago at Grid Life. But I've done enough of it that I feel like I have like this big collection of experiences, and I'm social enough where I get to pick from a lot of other people's experiences. So like from a driving and kind of what to expect from an organizer, I've definitely feel like I've got a good handle on it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jeanette? What do you think?
I'm sorry. It's an overwhelming question for me. So for some reason, I don't know why. Definitely being a beginner driver, I think that's like, I've said that so many times because I wasn't in the car world before I started driving. Like I didn't really look at cars. I didn't really like get excited about them. And I feel like that sometimes is an advantage because it is a completely fresh set of eyes on the event date. Where you get to step back and you're not distracted by all the drivers and the cars and the action and stuff like that. You actually see in what's happening and where people are going and the flow of things and who and the staff even. So I actually think in a lot of ways that's been an advantage for me, and running the events has made me more appreciative of the other organizations that I go to and more aware of what they're going through.
Sure.
I used to just go and just be naive and like, oh, why is there such a long wait? Oh, why is blah, blah, blah. And like now I get it. Like, oh, okay, you guys are doing awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so yeah, it's definitely there's a whole lot of things happening behind the curtains that drivers don't see.
Sure, and it's something it's hard unless you get completely on the side of it. The appreciation for it is hard to acquire per se, but it's something worth keeping in mind that like there's a lot going on at an event. And so like if you talk to one person, you're trying to like, hey, where's the false grid? And you get a response that's maybe a little prickly.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're dealing with at that moment? Just maybe go off and find somebody else or another driver, and don't take it personally, because I mean there's these track days, there are so many moving parts. It's crazy, and especially the less people that are there running the event, the more stress is on each one of those individuals. Mm-hmm. And so you never know if you're what you're getting into necessarily if you do get a kind of a prickly response.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because that is legit. And I mean, we know other people in other organizations who run events that are like probably the top tier of best quality human beings that you can find, way better humans than I am. And they get caught off in a weird moment or in a rough spot, and someone just assumes that they're this awful person. It's like, no, they're great. It was just the wrong time.
Right.
And there's a lot going on, and you just never know. We've experienced that where somebody made a complaint about one of our staff person, and like, oh, he's just too grumpy or whatever. Like, you don't realize he's actually doing like 6 things at once, and a lot of it has to do with safety. Like, he's focused. He's not there. He's not a customer service role. He's doing a safety role. Yeah. So it's interesting, a different perspective. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's taking everything with a grain of salt. I mean, as you're getting ramped up to go to an event, as you're at the event, and as you're participating, it's just, it kind of what has been bouncing around in my mind is like, try and be aware of, are you putting the stress on yourself, or is there actually an urgency or or as like a high level of importance of what you're doing to keep the event going. And if you're just putting all the stress on yourself, then if you can be aware of that, then that's probably a good reminder to just kind of take a step back, just relax. Like, do not there's enough going on. You don't need to heighten the stress level on yourself unduly.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to do, though.
So easy to do. Oh yeah. As I say that, I'm probably going to do it later today. I mean, it always happens. Yes. Well, very cool. Well, I think as we're winding down, like, is there just any other thoughts you guys have on this? Like maybe words of advice for somebody that has been prevented from going to an event because just as they get close to it, or like they get close to signing up for an event, they can't take that first step.
I would say, oh, sorry.
No, Jeanette.
I would say, do your best to let go of the expectations that everything's going to go right. Like, I mean, something's not going to be the perfect scenario. The car is either going to have issues, or you're not going to drive your best, or there's going to be someone who's faster than you and they're your close friend and you hate them for it. Or it's just let go of that expectation and be prepared to roll with the punches and just adapt as you go. I really think that that's the best thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, it's about being fluid. And I think people should have confidence that if it's your first event, that it's not going to go 100% smooth, just like Jeanette's saying, but there's definitely people there who are way willing to help. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love doing the instructing for Grid Life when I was doing it for NASA. You get to if you're a good instructor and you're really personable and stuff like that, and this is, I think, a good reason why people shouldn't just jump straight in the competition, like doing a DE or whatever is, I think, really good advice. You get paired with that person who's invested in your success. So if you're thinking about going to your first Grid Life or your first NASA event or your first SCCA event or whatever, signing up for the HPDE literally puts somebody in contact with you that is invested in your success. Like, you don't have to worry about trying to find somebody. They're looking for you. You've got like a built-in buddy. So doing that, I think, is a really good idea, honestly.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I really have enjoyed all of the NASA events that I've participated in. That's a big part of it. And also just having the structure has been a huge part of it. I can definitely see where some people would be turned off by the structure, but kind of for some of the stuff that we've talked about before, for me, having the structure and knowing that, like, the people that I'm going on track with are a group of people that are kind of more or less in my same experience level, has really been awesome. So, like, I'm not going to be driving on the track with somebody that's like won races or whatever. Like, I'm learning, and the people that I'm on track with are learning with me. And like I said, for the first couple of stages where you have somebody that is invested in what you're doing and that's there to really, like, I think for some of the HPD1, like, it's as much as like, this is how we get on track. We're getting on track now. This is what to pay attention to at the track. And now we're getting off the track. Literally to have kind of like the training wheels on, to just kind of like take that anxiety of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Well, we're putting somebody in your passenger seat that's going to walk you through every step, so that, like, now you know what the flow is like. Now you know where to go, what to do. It's just been a really positive experience.
Yeah, I mean, I even go so far as to usually reach out to my ducklings before an event, like the week of, email them, and then try and address some of the basic questions, like, hey, like, what do I need to bring with me? It's like, okay, awesome. You ready for the flat irons shameless plug?
All right.
Here's a flat irons video that shows you what to consider to bring with you to the track. Like, that's on the YouTube.
Yep.
When you have, like, it shows you like fluids and basic stuff. Answer those questions. What kind of brake pads? What kind of brake fluid do you have? I even go that extra step to make that bridge, that connection, so that people aren't arriving and then we all know, everybody in this, four-window lineup already knows that your track day doesn't start at 8 a.m. the day of the event. Your track day sometimes starts in a week or a couple weeks in advance.
Yeah.
And because of that preparation, sometimes people don't even think about, like, the helmet, like what kind of helmet they need, or what kind of brake pads they have, or what kind of brake, like, how recent is their oil change. mean, it's just the basic little things, because cars don't behave on track the same way they behave, you know, when you're driving to Kroger's or whatever.
Yep. How about
So,
you,
I mean,
Nigel?
that's, yeah.
Sorry.
Mine would be just like, remember that no matter what stress level you're at or what skill level you're at, everybody else at the track is either right there with you or has been there with you.
Mm.
So the thing I found is any event I've been to has had an amazing support system of just like other drivers who have been in the situation I'm in, where it's my first track day. My first ever track day, I randomly parked next to a kid who it was his first track day. So we bonded over that, and we went through those experiences together of like figuring things out for the very first time. And then my first competition event, I was like wandering around cluelessly, and people were like, "Hey, go do this. You need to get car teched here." Like, you know, nobody there started out above their first time. Everybody had a first time experience, and everybody there is usually pretty willing to like help you through that. And then the more times you go, the more you can like just gather that experience and feel more confident and comfortable going through it. And that's been my biggest like takeaway is everybody else was there. Everybody else was where I started.
That's a really helpful thing to remember. Yeah. I think if I was to give a piece of advice, it would be if you want to go, you've got to go. And just go. And I remember the first time I ever drove on track was at a Second Creek Raceway, which is it doesn't even exist anymore. And it was just an open track day. And I think I did a grand total of 10 laps. I got really excited. I got on the track like right towards the end of one of the sessions. I did like 2 laps and got flagged off, and so I had to come off. And then I was there with some friends, and there was a lot of excitement in the pits. And then I went on again, and it was like I got there like late in the session, whatever, and like I think I got 2 or 3 sessions on there, just a handful of laps. But it was even that it was just awesome. But it took a lot to get me there. But once I did it, it was even just a handful of laps. It was just a really fun experience, and that's what got me hooked. And I keep going back since. And I guess the other thing I would say is every next track day that you go to, no matter what, no matter if it goes completely wrong, is going to make the one after that even easier. Like it's just like it. If you really want to do this and you're interested in it, just know that there's momentum that builds up. Like every subsequent track day is going to make the one that comes after that even better, even easier. You're gonna find out things. You're gonna find the way to prepare for the track day, go to the track, run at the track, and then come home from it. That's just going to make everything better and easier. You just have to get started. You just have to, if you go out there and you do like a couple laps, that could be enough, and that just get the ball rolling.
And remember, it's about having fun. You're doing it because it's fun to do.
Absolutely.
Try to say that to some really competitive drivers, and they'll scoff at you. But it's all, you're having fun. That's the point.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, even the weekend where I put my car on the wall, like I can point out all the places where I had fun that weekend. And that was terrifying and stressful for so many different reasons. My first competition event and like, failures and working on the car, 2 days in a row and then crashing it. Like that was still a fun weekend. Like I can look back on it positively.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much, if you let yourself be aware of it, there's so many good things that can go on outside of just you being in the car at the event. Absolutely. There's no perfect track day, but they're all usually pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, very cool. Well, we've taken about an hour, so we're kind of winding down. So I think unless anybody's got some final thoughts, this is as good a place to wrap up as any.
Does anyone else just want to go drive really bad right now?
Oh man,
I just want to get on track.
Every time we do one of these podcasts, I come out of it and I'm like, I just want to go now, and but I've got to like drive the desk for another handful of hours. Yeah, it's just there's something about driving that just talking about it just makes, no matter what it is, it just makes you want to go out and do it.
Not that this is a closing statement, but on like the topic of being stressed, this weekend, like I guess I'm leaving tonight to prepare for it, but I don't have to build a car, prepare a car, or anything. All I've had to do the last couple of days to prepare for this event was make sure my fireproof socks are in my bag, install a little mic system in my helmet. Like it's been so like this event that's coming up for me this weekend, which is Lemons, is like so chill and exciting that I don't have to do anything. I just literally arrive and drive it. I'm really looking forward to it. And you talk about like the least amount of stress going into any kind of event. I'm just like, I can't even believe I'm driving this weekend because it doesn't even feel like it. Like all the prep and stuff that I usually do, like I'm leaving the trailer behind. I'm just picking up, Cokes to go with my bourbons, and I have my suit, and I'm literally just gonna sit in a Miata and drive for hours. And I'm just excited about like it's just so much fun to drive somebody else's car that you don't have to worry about at all.
And this is what driving for years and years and years and having all that experience looks like. Of that, there is no anxiety of driving and no like it's just pure excitement. Like it takes time to get there, and that's unfortunately that's Ryan.
Well, that's okay, because honestly, like that can be enough of a motivator again to get you to that first event. Is like just know that like this is going to be a process. There's going to be steps along the road, but if you stick with it and you put in the work, there's going to be a point where just like all of a sudden you know what you got to do, you know what your process is, and you can really just focus on driving and enjoying the fact that you're driving and just have a great relaxed weekend to do that. It's there that the dream can happen. Absolutely.
I love it.
Yes. Well, very good. Well, thank you guys very much for being open to having a conversation about this and making the time and sitting down for the podcast once again. So really appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
It was fun.
Yes. And to everybody out there, thanks very much for listening. And until next time, as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. All right. Thanks so much.